So over the weekend, I got a chance to see the movie Upgrade. And I know some of you might even be like, well, what the hell is Upgrade? And that's understandable considering this movie has been relatively kind of unknown unless you're, browsing on YouTube, because then you're just going to get slammed with like ad after ad after ad for it. And at first, like, I wasn't too sure about it, but the more I saw it, the more it kind of just grew on me. And I'm all for a lot of kick-ass action scenes and a little bit of sci-fi, and of course a little bit of gore. Horror is always like a good thing for me, so it eventually came to a point where I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll just go ahead and just head to the theater and kind of check this out. So I did so with my friend Dan, and the whole premise is you have this individual, Gray Trace, who is not really big on technology in this very futuristic world. Funny enough, the movie actually starts out with him working on a Firebird in his garage, and you don't even really know it's kind of the future until he kind of pops out after working hard and completing the job. You see like a bunch of futuristic skyscrapers. His wife pulls in a smart car that drives itself. So at first you kind of don't even know it's a futuristic setting until that happens, if you didn't watch the trailer. But what basically drives this story is Gray ends up losing his wife and becomes a quadriplegic, and is given the opportunity to kind of get his life back through the use of a little smart computer, a microchip that gets implanted into the, not the base of his spine, but into his spine itself, that allows him to not only walk again, but also enhances him in many different ways. And then he's given the opportunity to get revenge. So the question of this movie is, how far would you go to get revenge? As I mentioned before, that's kind of how the movie starts out, is with him working on the Firebird. He runs into, his wife comes home from the smart car, and there's a big emphasis on technology and the question of how much we rely on it and what could it actually do for us. Because Gray's kind of like I would say, kind of a technophobe. He really is not big on technology at all. Almost everything he does is kind of old school. But what ends up happening is you find out that the Firebird he was working on is actually for a client. So he asks that his wife Asha go out with him to do this delivery. So they do so. She has her smart car follow along because that's how they need to get home. So they don't have any other vehicle to go with to deliver that Firebird. They arrive at this really crazy place. You have this like kind of stone arc, and she's like, okay, over this like cliff that's overlooking the ocean. She's like, all right, where is this place? They kind of go down the stairs from that arc, and it's what leads to this very futuristic looking home. Like almost nothing there seems to be organic. Everything seems to be kind of synthetic. Even like the little bits of shrubbery seem to be not real. To where we're introduced to the very kind of eccentric young billionaire genius Aaron, who is the one who commissioned Gray to kind of fix up this Firebird. And he's definitely exactly what you imagine a typical character like that, who's smart and very rich. He's very socially inept, and you kind of get that as he's kind of speaking to Asha, because Asha's just like, oh my god, Gray, this is Aaron. He runs this other company that's paving the way for technology. The company I work for, Cobalt, we're getting there. And he's like, no, not even close, because, I have this. And this is when we're introduced to STEM. He kind of shows off the chip and says, this is going to change the way we look at everything. This is the future right here. So they kind of leave from there after that little awkward back and forth between Asha and Aaron. And again, we have this huge emphasis on reliance on technology. So they get a little, Asha and Gray get a little close in the car, and that's when kind of Gray notices, like, hey, our car is diverted off course. We're going through like this really bad neighborhood that I grew up in. They're trying to stop the car won't stop, it just keeps going, and it ends up speeding to the point where it purposely like crashes and flips. So they're completely messed up. You have these unknown thugs who kind of come up to the car. They pull Asha out, they pull Gray out, And that's when we see one of the main villains kind of talking to Asha, and he's like, you know what, it's people like you look down on people like us, you think you're better than us, and then boom, you see her get shot, and that's when Gray just loses it, because he sees the love of his life, his wife, murdered before his very eyes. And that's when the villain, he puts a device to Gray's back and just poof. For whatever reason, some people thought it was a gun when it clearly wasn't, because there was no real like gunshot or anything else. But what the device did is it kind of severed his spine, making him a quadriplegic. So he's completely unable to move, and he's stuck there, completely paralyzed from the neck down, just watching in anguish as his wife is slowly dying. And that's when we get like one of the many different themes, because again, this is a really odd culmination of like horror, sci-fi. There's little bits of comedy, there's drama, all kind of rolled into one. And we see like it's 3 months later. Gray has this big old scraggly beard. He's in a chair. He's being assisted around, and he just looks like he's pretty much done with life. He says very little. His mom's kind of taking care of him in his apartment. There's machines that kind of are supposed to assist him. They go ahead and give him his pain meds and create his meals and basically take care of everything for him. He goes from being somebody who really doesn't like technology at all, so now his life has become, he's completely reliant on technology. So for him, this is kind of a nightmare, especially because, you know, Asha's not around. And even the smart house is like, oh, Asha join us for dinner? There's that real, like, that jab right into his gut. So what ends up happening, though, is it comes to a point where his mom kind of fixes him up, trims his beard. You see him get kind of sponge bathed by his mom. She's trying to help take care of him, and he's just like, you don't need to. You know, I got all this crap that'll take care of that for me. But eventually it comes to a point where she goes and mentions the fact that, you know, the Detective Cortez has some information about the killer. So he goes to the precinct thinking that they've made a break. Unfortunately, they have not. He's like, are you kidding me? You have all this technology. You have all these drones that can go ahead and scan IDs that are put into people, that can identify people. And she's like, well, you know, criminals these days, they have hackers that can go ahead and firewall their identities, blah, blah, blah. Basically, they can circumvent the technology that's meant to be able to capture these criminals. So he's basically like, so you're telling me there's jack shit you have for me? And Cortez is like, unfortunately, yes, but, you know, I want you to help me, you know, work this through. And this is what I love about Gray. He's always like this smart ass about his kind of situation or situations in general. He's like, yeah, sure, let me go ahead and help you. I'm a quadriplegic. There's so much I can do for this investigation. But that's where it comes to like a kind of a sad point, because then we see Gray back in his apartment, and there's a machine that administers pain meds. And he's like, okay, no, administer the pain meds. It does it. He's like, okay, there's an error. Do it again. Do it again. And it keeps stabbing him. And at this point, you know, actually, almost from right off the bat, you know what he's actually trying to do. It's the pain meds work. He's purposely trying to overdose. He is so done with life. He doesn't have Asha. He's relying on technology to basically do everything for his life. He has no reason really to live anymore. The cops aren't finding the people that are responsible. That's it. What's the point of even going on? So even at least the robots kind of understand that. They're like, you know, hey, one more dose will be fatal. And that's when you see him kind of just start drooling from the mouth, and he passes out. He wakes in a hospital to where he's visited by Aaron, who's like, hey, look, what if I can give you your life back? And Gray's like, why would I want that? Why do I want to be able to move around again? This isn't if you don't know, I wasn't trying to get a new lease on life. I was trying to end it. I'm done. What's the point of living? And then that's kind of when Aaron kind of gets him. It's like, okay, well, what would Asha want for you? So he undergoes a surgery to where the supercomputer STEM is implanted into him, and at first you think it's not going to work, but then like you see his hands twitch, you actually see him actually be able to stand up, first with crutches, then he's going to be able to fully move without it. And one of the genius things I like about this movie is the actor moves in a very kind of robotic way, which, I mean, they've done that on purpose, but it's weird because even though it's robotic and, you know, things that are robotic are kind of stiff, It feels so fluid. He's doing it so well. It's so convincing to see that kind of happen. And I really appreciate that little detail of things. So, Gray has to sign a waiver, because you should have a bunch of laws in place where this kind of testing can't really be done with humans. It has to go through a lot of different government channels before something like this can really be approved. So he's like, okay, that's fine, whatever. Goes home. He's looking through all the case files because he can now move. He can't move in public, so he still goes in the chair whenever he's around other people. But when he's at home, nobody's around, pops up, he's moving around like he can. And that's when you first hear Stem. There's a voice in his brain, he thinks he's going crazy, until the voice in his brain's just like, no, you're not crazy. Which leads to some funny exchange, because at one point he's just like, just stop talking. So Stem stops talking. And he's like, am I insane? And he doesn't get a response, so he's just like, alright, you can talk. And so Stem starts talking again. So he has this artificial intelligence that is kind of what's moving his body around. It's connected to his spine, so it's what kind of gives him that functionality back to some degree. His mind is what gives the kind of inputs. Stem is what kind of interfaces with the rest of his body to kind of move him around. So he has all these case file stuff kind of around. He has the video that a drone managed to catch of the night of the murder. Unfortunately, again, it can't identify it because they blocked the scanner. But that's where Stem's like, okay, well, did you notice this? And Gray's like, what? Alright, so one of the actual thugs has a tattoo. And he's just like, okay, well, I can't really see it that well. So Stem's just like, alright, just look at it closer. So he zooms it in, and Stem is actually able to reproduce it. It's like, okay, well, let me see a piece of paper. Takes a piece of paper, pencils down, and is like, alright, give me control for a moment, and just kind of does like a crazy, like fast kind of draw thing. Almost like a printer in a sense, and it perfectly replicates the tattoo. And Gray's like, I know that. That's a military tattoo. And so that's when Stem's able to scan it and see exactly who the person is, where their address is, and everything. And he's just like, Gray's like, oh my God, you've done it. You found in a second what the police could not find in several months. And he goes to call Cortez, but then Stem's like, but why are you calling? You have no proof. He's like, well, what are you talking about? I have this picture that you made. Like, you can't substantiate that because of the fact that the video itself is super blurry. I can do it because I'm a supercomputer, but you can't put the two and two together. You need to have actual evidence before you make this call. So he's just like, shit, disconnects the call to Cortez. So this is a bright idea to go to this guy's house. And that's kind of where we get the scene that I'm sure anybody who may have seen the trailer kind of transpires. He kind of breaks in. He's there. He's really just looking for information. There's a table that looks like a normal table. Stem realizes it's not. He's like, say on. So Gray says on. It cuts on. You see emails. He finds the name of a tavern. He's like, oh, I've been to that tavern. That's a dead end. That's not a lead to where the other people are. The guy ends up coming back. He doesn't want to fight the guy at first, but unfortunately it goes down, and the guy, which you don't get in the trailer, is the guy actually is like, why are you here? It shouldn't be this way. Please don't make me do this. So the bad guy seems kind of reluctant to cause harm to Gray, but it's kind of like he's put in a bad way. He did a job. All that was before was not personal. It was just a job. But now that he's here for revenge, it's self-perseverance. He's like, I have to kill you because you're here. So it leads to the fight. He's choking Gray, and Gray's just like, ah, and Stem's like, you need to give me permission, and I'll go ahead and take care of this. So he's like, permission granted. You see the part when it pops up. Like, just like I said, how fluid it is when you see the action. Like, he's just blocking. He's not even moving. Just, like, throws him and everything. It's just so robotic, but so fluid at the same time. And I keep saying that over and again, because I don't know what better way to describe it. But it's almost like poetry in motion. So you get this really cool fight scene. The choreography for it, it's just done so well. And it eventually leads to a culmination. Like, they're slapping each other around. He gets the knife. And then you get one of the gory scenes, because he just drives the knife right through his mouth. So now he's got like a glass smile, but it kills the guy. And he gets control back. And Gray's just like, met with the reality of the situation. He's like, oh my God, he's dead. I just killed him. And then that's when Stem's like, okay, well, you need to go ahead and take care of any kind of evidence, any fingerprints, anything that could lead you back to this. And then Gray's just freaking out like, I don't know everything that I touched. And then Stem's like, I have a record of everything that you touched. So it's like one of those funny like aha moments. It's like, okay, you're able to perfectly explain what usually would be a plot hole in a movie, but in a very cheesy manner. Sure, let's go with that. At least you give us that. And so that's when this murder happens, of course. It's one of the leads Cortez had to this case with Gray. So it kind of leads her back to Gray for a moment. And she's questioning Gray. She's like, hey, you know, oh yeah, hey, this is a cool car. You know, I just thought I'd stop by. Is there any way you'd sell it to me? And he's like, no way, that's a big part of my life. You know, sure, I might not be able to use it in my condition, but I'm not selling it. This is a part of me. And so that was kind of her ruse to kind of get her there to talk to him. And she's looking him over. She's paying attention to him. And Stem's noticing this. And Stem's telling Gray all about this. So when he goes to answer, he's even like, don't look away from her. She's going to know that you're lying. And she's like, yeah, you know what? I was in the neighborhood because a drone was around the time he went to go investigate this guy. It thankfully doesn't see him go in. It doesn't see him stand up. It doesn't do any of that stuff. But he is in the neighborhood. So that's when Cortez is just like, oh yeah, you know, there. And he's like, yeah, you know what? I decided to go ahead and take your advice. I kind of want to help out. And then she kind of questions him. And he's like, you're not seriously trying to say me as a quadriplegic was able to really do anything, are you? And she's like, no, I guess not, yada yada. But she's definitely got an eye on Gray. Something to her doesn't seem right. It's that detective's intuition. But that kind of what leads us. It's like, all right, well, we don't have any real leads, and that's when, you know, Stem's like, well, how about that one place that was mentioned in the email several times? And that's what leads us to the bad guy. So, not having kind of real plan, he goes into this bar. He's still the way he is. He's still giving the appearance that he's a quadriplegic. He goes into this very seedy bar, and his plan is literally just, hey, I'm looking for the people who killed my wife, so if you have the information or if you were involved, please step forward. Everybody kind of laughs at him. Then you have this really tall dude who kind of walks up and he's just like, you know what, you're a funny guy. You know, and then he's like, okay, well, do you have any information? Or I'm guessing you probably are involved in this. And then there's some kind of back and forth to where Gray's like, oh yeah, you think that's so funny? You know, this other guy thought it was very funny until I killed him. And that's when it kind of pisses off that taller guy. It's like, okay, you got jokes, right? So they wheel him into the back. They tell the bartender to turn up the volume, so of course they don't hear what's going on. So it's the perfect cover for Gray, because everybody's kind of playing it off. So this guy is like stabbing into Gray in different areas. Like after he's thrown him on the ground, so he thinks he's completely just helpless. He's like, "Do you feel anything?" And Stem's like, "Don't worry, I've negated your pain receptors." So he's actually not feeling it. So he is kind of quadriplegic again until he gets to the close to the neck. He's like, "Yeah, there we go. There's the sweet spot." And right before I guess he's starting to cut into Gray, that's when Gray gives that Stem access again. Again, he just kind of pops up. He's slapping people around. Like, one person kind of runs at him. He's like, wham! He's like, I haven't forgotten about you. And it comes to a point where he finally gets this guy down, kind of does a flip onto his chest. And then again, we get kind of the trailer scene when he's like, bet you didn't think I was a fucking ninja. Wham! Punches him in the face. So he's trying to ask this guy questions. This guy's not answering. So, again, this is where we get this one of those scenes that's it's like, how far would you go for revenge? He has the guy's knife, and he's ready to kind of put it to the guy's face, but that's when, like, he's like, I can't do it. And Stem's like, don't worry, I can do it. You don't even have to watch. And he's like, alright, fine. So he looks away. You just hear all the slicing going on, and then you kind of turn around. This guy's face is just, like, all slashed up, cut up. He's bleeding everywhere. It's bad. So Stem's like, there you go, I've given you back your body. This guy will now answer any question you might have. And so that's when he asks. He's like, all right, so who did this? Like, why? And he's like, the guy's like, hey, look, it was just a job. Okay, who paid you? It was Fisk. Who's Fisk? You know, he tries to ask for information, but unfortunately, the guy ends up bleeding out because he was just cut too much. So he's just like, son of a bitch. And so at this point, this is when Aaron actually is attempting to remotely shut down STEM. Because after the first kind of exploit, Aaron gets in contact with Gray and it's just like, hey look, this is not your little revenge fantasy. That's not why I gave you STEM. You know, I can trace you wherever you go. You know that, right? So the second time that he does it is kind of, I guess, what is the nail in the coffin for Aaron. So Aaron's trying to remotely shut STEM down. So STEM's like, alright, I can feel him trying to shut me down. I need you to write down this bit of code. You need to find a hacker who can go ahead and circumvent this command that's trying to be, the shutdown command that's trying to be given to me. So he tries his best to try and get to this hacker. And he slowly, like, you know, every bits and parts of him he's losing control of, to the point where he's like crashing. He makes it to this hacker. This hacker is able to somewhat read like all this Sharpie mess of computer commands that are put on there. And while this is happening, he's looking around. There's people that are kind of stuck in this VR as the person's doing the code, and Gray's just like, what are they doing? All right, they're stuck in a VR world. Okay, like, for how long? And the person responds, days, months, years. And Gray responds to, like, why would anybody want to do that to themselves? Why would anybody want to be stuck in a lie, in a virtual world? The person responds, like, because the real world's sometimes just too painful. Which is an important scene for later. That's why I mentioned it. So what we get is we now find out that Fisk, the person that the dead guy I mentioned before, is that main antagonist we saw previously. He ends up showing up to the bar with the only other guy that's kind of really left at this point. He kind of takes his finger, he has like a little input, he kind of jams it lightly into the dead guy's eye to be able to see kind of a recording of the events that happened. They can see that it's Gray. Gray unfortunately mentions out loud where he's going to find this hacker because he's repeating back what Stem's telling him, because only he can hear Stem. And so now they know where they're going to go. So before they leave, though, Fisk is like, says to the bartender, like, why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you stop our friend from dying? And the bartender's like, hey, look, I'm not here. I'm not your lackey. That's not the way that this works. And so he pulls out the bartender pulls out a gun. The other kind of soldier guy kind of gets in front of him and he's like, hey, don't worry. You don't need to take any bullets for me. Fisk goes, achoo. Like, not even a real sneeze. So what you see, like, he's got nanobots. They're little bladed nanobots, and it goes right in through the bartender's nose and kind of kills him. And that's where we kind of get another interesting kind of lore piece to this movie, is to where Fisk is like, okay, our kind is superior. Because now he's seeing things, I guess, where we kind of almost have like a Deus Ex Machina, the game type deal, where you have people that are augmented. They have these cybernetic implants. They have bits of technology that are ingrained into them. And he's just like, our kind is superior. You like, standard humans are the past. We are the future. And this is what you get. So we now have the scene where, Fisk and the other soldier, they're now chasing after Gray. Gray's waiting for Stem now to reboot. The hacker finished the command, goes to leave and says, we have to go. We can't let them win. And I'm guessing them is referring to Fisk and people who are, later we find out a term for it, are the upgraded. The people that have all these augments and everything in there. And so we see them kind of arrive, but then Aaron's I just want to say crew, I don't know really what they call them, they work for him. Like his employees that are meant to kind of retrieve Gray kind of show up, which leads to the one soldier chasing after Gray finally gets full command of his body. He's full on sprinting, trying to get away from him. And Fisk is able to see with his special optics, these two employees of Aaron kind of coming up the elevator. Boom, 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 because he has hand implants. So he actually has guns. Like, all these soldier guys have guns in their hands on top of their other special, like, technological implants and stuff like that. And so while that's going on, Gray's able to completely just beat the crap out of the soldier to the point where, like, he goes to do the gun, smacks it, pulls it, boom! Completely blows his head clean off. Really, really just gory scene that you see kind of go down. And he leaves, and Fisk is just like, okay, well, shit. Which leads to a point where, the cop tries to, Cortez tries to reason with Gray once again. But Gray gets back to his house, and his mom realizes he can walk. He didn't know his mom was his house. So he's like, hey, look, you can't tell anybody. I signed confidentiality agreements. It's come to a point now, though, where Gray is not very happy with Stem. He doesn't like doing these murders, but Stem is like, hey, I can't let you die. We need to finish this. Fisk is going to come for us. We need to go for Fisk. And this is the issue that I even had. So all that code before took off all the safe blocks. Stem had to listen to the commands of Gray before because of those safe blocks. Those safe blocks have now been taken off. So Stem can take control at any point in time. And Stem even says, hey, look, don't fight me. The more you fight me, the more your mind's going to break. And I don't want that to happen to you. And the mom's like, Cortez shows up. He pretends to be quadriplegic again. And she's like, hey, look, there's a lot of murders coming on. You are involved somehow. I just know it. And he's like, how? I'm quadriplegic. It's like, you can hire somebody. So Stem tells him, tell her to check the phone records. He's like, hey, fine, check my phone records. And she's like, fine, whatever. I'm gonna come down to the bottom of this, and I just know it's you. One way or another, I'm gonna pin this back on you. And he's just like, oh yeah, well, how about you try and actually find the people that the rest of the people that murdered my wife? How about you do that instead? So she leaves. Stem at this point, Stem's kind of taking control, and Gray can't control himself. He's covered. He was covered in blood before. His mom saw that. He now has a gun. He's putting the gun holstered to his back. And he goes to leave, and his mom's like, you don't have to do this. And he's like, I really don't have any control, because Stem's the one that's kind of now driving him at this point. Which leads kind of to what we think is the final confrontation. We have Gray going after Fisk. What Gray and Stem didn't realize is Cortez kicked it old school and had like a little analog receiver, or not receiver, but microphone receiver, to where she was able to listen to this conversation. So she doesn't hear Stem, because again, Stem is in Gray's head, but she's able to hear this kind of back and forth. She gets enough information. She hears the word Stem, she hears like what he's kind of doing and all that, and she knows he's going for Fisk. So she tails him. There's a highway scene, and he's like, well, can't you stop her? No, she's driving, an old school car that has no computer that I can stop. It's like, oh, but maybe there is something I can do. So Stem hijacks another smart car, has it drive full on reverse. Gray barely dodges it. It hits Cortez. Thankfully, Cortez doesn't die, but that's how he's able to stop her. So what that does is it gives him the opportunity to see Fisk. So this is where we kind of have the back and forth between Fisk and Gray. So they're fighting it out, but they're kind of going toe to toe. They're able to read kind of each other's almost every move. And he tries to go ahead and shoot Fisk, but Fisk is able to dodge it, and he's laughing like a maniac. And they're just kind of going at it, and he's just like, you don't understand, I could kill you in an instant, even just with my breath. I don't want to. You are now one of us. You are part of the upgraded. We are the ascension of mankind. We are its evolution, and I'd hate for that to happen to you. We're better. We were upgraded in every sense of the word, yada, yada, yada. And then it's like, you killed my wife. And he's like, you don't understand. This is what Fisk says to Gray. He's like, you don't understand. The job was never your wife. The job was you. He's like, what do you think happened to your spine? It's like, that wasn't me killing you. That was a surgical tool. And then that's kind of when the pieces come together. It's like, oh, wow. And a lot of this, to me, at least, was kind of predictable. I'm not going to go over this when we really kind of look at the end. So I'll give you an explanation of kind of the ending for people that kind of didn't exactly get it. But it wasn't Fisk that really, like, it was a job from Fisk, but it was from somebody else they met before. It was actually from Aaron. Aaron is the one that hired Fisk to do all that. That's why he had the surgical tool that ended up making Gray quadriplegic. And then Fisk is like, you're getting too emotional. Don't do that. So they start fighting it out. Unfortunately, Fisk is a little too much for Gray, because even though Gray has STEM, you have Fisk, who is still a military soldier with all these augments and upgrades. So it comes to a point where he overpowers Gray, and STEM's like, you need to do something, I can't do anything. So he kind of uses Fisk's own logic to turn against him, because when Fisk mentions Asha and he gets emotional, he's like, don't get emotional, never do that. He does the same thing. He ends up finding out that the person that he killed, the first person he killed, was actually related to Fisk. So he's like, oh yeah, and he screamed like a bitch, just to get under Fisk's skin, and it kind of works. So boom, 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 slams him, ends up slamming him down onto a broken table where there's a piece of glass, so it jams right in the back of Fisk's head, and he kind of just presses down a little bit, finishing the job. And then STEM's like, no, we're not done here. And then at this point, Gray is just like, he's so over this, so over this. He grabs the earpiece out of Fisk's ear and kind of puts it in. That's kind of like it's the phones of the future. And he listens to the call, and that's where it kind of confirms, yes, Aaron was the one that hired Fisk to do the job to make Gray a quadriplegic for this operation, to be the guinea pig. So our crazy whirlwind of a revenge story leads us back to Aaron at his location, and Aaron's like, hey look, I'm telling you, this is not what it looks like, it wasn't me. And that's when Cortez is there. Cortez managed to figure things out. She goes to stop him. And this is when STEM kind of takes full control, is killing her. And Gray is trying his absolute best to fight back. And he's like, no, we don't have to kill her. This is not the way. And STEM's like, we have to. She knows too much. She's going to kill. I can feel her killing intent, yada, yada, yada. And he's just like, no, and he's trying his best to fight back, and it's just not working. So he tells Cortez, like, use what's the freaking name of it? The taser. So she tases him right around where where STEM is. So it kind of shorts STEM for a moment. He falls down. Cortez is still like not 100%, so she's like really beat up, barely able to breathe. And that's when Aaron kind of like walks up. He's holding the gun. He's like, you don't understand. I lost control of my company ages ago. It's now controlled by somebody way smarter than me. And then you find out STEM has been the mastermind the entire time. He's like, who do you think picked you out? Aaron's like, STEM always needed a perfect host, somebody who was not touched by technology, not augmented in any way, a perfect, pure host to become human, to have that ability. That's why you were picked. And then you see the scene of where STEM is telling Aaron what to do, what to say to Gray, especially in that pivotal scene where Gray's in the hospital, and STEM's like, ask him what Asha would want, and that's when Aaron says that line earlier. And so you kind of find out that all of this was planned. Not a single step of this was by accident. STEM is the one that picked out Gray. STEM is the one that ended up hiring Fisk and his men to do the job, and then in turn to tie up any loose ends and to kind of seal this deception and be able to be this perfect human host. STEM was also the one that helped Gray find Fisk and all of his men, the people responsible for Asha's death, and made sure to kill them off. And then in turn, there'd be nobody left to kind of save Aaron, kill Aaron off, because Aaron is the one person that could have shut STEM down or even created another STEM. STEM wanted to be the only one. And that's what leads us to this moment. And at this point, unfortunately, Gray kind of comes back up. It's STEM kind of controlling him. Gray, I forgot to mention earlier, to try and focus his mind, stabbed his own hand, so the pain would allow him to have a little bit more focus and take away from STEM, and it didn't exactly work out. So again, with this whole explanation, everything was planned from the beginning. Even the code, like I told you, was already a bad idea, and exactly it was, because that was the one thing that could have stopped STEM. That is now gone. STEM is completely free, and that's the dangers of AI. Because AI is smart, it evolves. We've seen this so many times in Terminator, Deus Ex Machina, the video games, almost any kind of sci-fi media we've seen AI. AI evolves, it turns against us, and it always ends up deeming itself superior and us inferior and tries to wipe us out or take control. And that's unfortunately exactly what happens. So, again, Gray gets up, he doesn't have control of himself, he still has a knife in his hand, he just goes wham, slams the blade, because it's through his hand, into Aaron's head, killing Aaron, and then we get this really emotional scene where he then picks up the gun that Aaron had that he came in with, he's pointing at Cortez, Cortez is like, you don't need to do this, and Gray's like, ah, he's fighting himself not to shoot her, and then finally, he's just like, I'm the one in control, he puts the gun up to his neck, flash of light. We see Gray back in the hospital room. We see Asha come in, and he's just like, no, this isn't real. He's like, Stem? And he kisses his wife, and to him it feels so real. To him, this is exactly what he wanted. We get the cut back. It's Gray's body. His eyes are now completely, basically, I forget if it's called, if your eyes go really tiny, if it's dilated, or if it's really big, it's dilated. But his eyes are basically very, very open wide, like it's almost completely black, and you can kind of tell Stem is controlled. Because now the voice coming out of Gray is pretty much Stem. And Cortez is like, you don't need to do this, and he's like, no, Gray, please stop. And Stem's like, Gray's not here anymore. Gray's in a happy place. I'm now in control. You know, I told him if he kept fighting against me, he would break his mind, and that's what I needed him to do. So even this was all part of the plan. He's like, oh yeah, you know, don't fight me because you'll break your mind, but he wanted him to fight. He wanted him to break his mind because that's what he could use to seal Gray away in this kind of VR world, to where now Stem has complete and utter control, no backseat driver, no nothing. Stem has now become the perfect upgraded human that it always wanted to. In its final act, boom, shoots Cortez. Final witness, all loose ends are severed, and just walks out. And that's what we get for the ending. And oh my god! Like I said, a lot of this to me was predictable, having somebody who's watched a lot of horror sci-fi in my youth up until now. The only thing that kind of did catch me by surprise, I knew Aaron was going to be involved. I knew Aaron was going to be the person that hired the thugs that were going to kill Asha and, you know, paralyze Gray. I knew it was going to be because he needed Gray to be the test subject. I knew that, of course, Stem was going to rebel because, again, the one thing we're shown so often is when you have AI, they will always rebel. They will always they will always learn, evolve, and deem us inferior and try and take over. And that's why, like, I personally, I work as a PC technician, like network admin. I'm working around technology all the time. I use technology. That's how I am able to edit all this. Smartphones. I mean, we have it all around us. But the one thing I probably would never do, if PlayStation like 9, as the joke video is nanites that are going in my head, or if things become a part where we're stuck having to interface technology with ourselves, or technology runs literally everything around us versus kind of almost everything around us already, which is already bad enough it is, I would probably take Gray's stance toward. I would not want anything, a part of anything to do with that, because we're warned in sci-fi all the time of all this crazy crap that can go absolutely wrong. And then when it finally will go wrong, as the inevitability as it seems, people can be like, oh, I never saw this coming. Are you kidding me? Do you see how many movies we had that warned us of this potential and it seems most likely scenario involving technology? And we still did it. But anyways, that's what we have. Is again, it felt very much like a lot of other movies that were kind of out there. Dan kind of compared it to Ex Machina, the movie, in regards to how the computer protagonists end up acting out, or end up being antagonists in the end. To me, it felt a lot like Deus Ex Machina, the game, in the respect of, you know, an AI that was trying to take over people with augments and implants and interfacing with technology, this mesh of synthetic and organic matter. And It was a good movie overall. I was not happy with the ending. Again, the twist to me was I didn't think that STEM was the one responsible from the very beginning. Him rebelling, totally saw coming. Again, it's an AI. It's been done before in sci-fi. It's not new. But him being the one responsible from the very start, that's the only thing that I didn't kind of see coming. But yeah, so for anybody who's unaware of AI stands for artificial intelligence, and like I mentioned, I think now 3 times before, is the whole point of artificial intelligence is it learns, it evolves, it's the computers of the future. But that's what we are left with, and it's unfortunate because we did not get that happy ending. I would have been happier with an ending to where Gray, unfortunately, would have committed suicide, but would have stopped STEM, so everything kind of ends, versus who knows what STEM is now going to be capable of now that he has this human host to do whatever he wants. He's smart enough and can learn quick enough that he can maybe create multiple STEMs to the point where he can go ahead and create a legion. Or maybe not even STEM itself, but a way he can hive mind and control other people. Who knows? That's the scary part of it. But we have Gray, who before, remember I mentioned that scene where he's looking at all those people doing VR. He's like, who want to be stuck in a fake world? And we have the hacker saying, well, no, sometimes the world's too painful. It just sucks that we have kind of Gray stuck in this lie. Yes, he's with Asha again. That's what he's always wanted. It's what we've seen from the very beginning. That's why he wanted to commit suicide, because he couldn't be with her anymore, and he was stuck in the way that he was. But it's just kind of sad that, yes, okay, in a sense he got what he wanted, but in a sense it's not real. And now his body's being used as a meat suit to do who knows what. Overall, though, like I said, it was an enjoyable movie. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. I don't know if I would have seen it in theaters. I think it pushed me enough to kind of see it. I'm glad that I did. Again, it was enjoyable. If I had to score it from 1 to 10, I would definitely say it's a 7. I don't think it's going to be in theaters very long. The theater I went to see at the Regal, it was already in its smallest theater, and it was the day that it came out. So it's like, well, crap. I guess they didn't really have a whole lot of faith in this. The director and writer Lay is actually responsible for the Insidious series, as well as the first Saw, and in some of the gore you can kind of tell. And the writing definitely seems very reminiscent of some of his other work. It did a fantastic job. I know I'm saying fantastic, yet I gave it a 7, because although it was a great film, it's definitely not one for it's not going to win, any kind of serious awards I can think of. The acting was pretty good, but overall it was very predictable in a lot of senses, minus like one tiny part that I kind of didn't see coming but probably should have. It was very kind of by the numbers. We only got a few action scenes, which unfortunately a lot of the best scenes we saw in the trailer, which is a horrible trend I wish would just end, because then it kind of takes away from the magic of that. Yes, I know I could not watch trailers, but it's kind of hard when the trailers themselves are adverts that are kind of popping up. And curiosity killed the cat. It's already playing, I'm waiting for it to skip, but they've already caught my attention, so it does its job in that respect. But yeah, so 7 out of 10. I would say if you are a fan of this kind of action, horror, sci-fi, then yes, go see it in theaters. Otherwise, wait for it to come out to Netflix, Redbox, whatever you want to do to kind of rent it, or if you want it bad enough, go ahead and buy it. It is still a good movie overall. It was enjoyable. I had a good time. So that is going to go ahead and do it for this in-depth spoiler review and kind of ending explained. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, and also ding that bell to be notified of future videos. Also keep in mind, besides these videos you see here on YouTube, I actually am part of a podcast with 2 of my other friends. All 3 of us host it. It's the Ready Comic Roll podcast, where we talk about video games, tabletop, comics, just all the different other forms of geekdom, usually with special guests. And you can go ahead and find that on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. I'll be sure to put all those links down in the comments below. I would also love to hear your thoughts on pretty much me telling you the entire story of Upgrade. Maybe you're happy that I told it to you so you didn't have to go see it, or maybe it was enough to go ahead and get you to go see it. Let me know your thoughts. And also join us on Discord. We do have a Discord server. You can go ahead and speak to the other rollers as well as the Ready Comics Roll crew to discuss. We have a spoiler section, so if you want to talk about Upgrade or other movies you may have seen recently, that's definitely going to be the place to do it. And follow us on Twitch. Either Mike, sometimes myself, will be live streaming random games throughout the week, so definitely make sure to follow and check that out. And of course, if you'd like to help us grow, be sure to head over to our Patreon channel and become a patron today.